Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Nye. There's gunk on my controller. Don't know where it came from. It's bothering me a little bit. Okay. Right now on Isle Deck Need is 9:08 a.m. on Friday, May 8th, 2020, with no news as usual. There was a documentary show, however, on TV yesterday, all about the history of cricket. Quite informative. Talking about cricket puts me right to sleep. That's news from Isabel. Thanks, Isabel. So I was to talk about the book Thunderer. It's kind of a neat book. It's one of those books that I don't do this as often anymore because typically I get my reading material through Amazon on my phone because it's just a little bit more convenient. Did you like school? I didn't. Gym wasn't hard enough. I tried jumping ahead to college level gym class, but it was still too easy. Guess I'm just too swole for school. Anyway, here's to our school days. Coach Boone. Typically I get my reading material through Amazon, through, a variety of things that they do. Which, while fun, what did he give us? A lab experiment set. I'm pretty sure we have that. Well, fun. It doesn't have the same idea as going into Barnes and Noble and kind of browsing through and looking for books that they happen to have, and that is really how I ended up getting Thunderer. Also, in case you couldn't tell, I did go sell my my turnips. Got some cool stuff also while I was at that person's island. Probably my favorite thing that I ended up snagging was they had Jester outfits in multiple colors. So now we can get that outfit going. Think I'm gonna stick with our Dash and Do for the time being. Whoop, that's not what I wanted. Pants. There we go. But yeah, it was very fun thing to do while I could do it. It's been something I really haven't done much as of late, to be honest. Not for any particularly big reason, to be 100% honest with you. I just haven't gotten really around to going to Barnes & Noble. Books, not even hardback, but physical books are a fair bit more expensive than their digital counterparts, which is one of the reasons why I went digital in the first place. Apart from such a thing as saving paper and the ease of access, but there is definitely nothing quite as fun, at least in my mind, when it comes to picking out books, as going to a book retailer and just kind of going down the aisles, looking at books and kind of doing the thing that that they say you should never do, but judging a book by its cover. It is said not to do that, but I have found a number of very fun books that I only found because I did judge the book by its cover, and Thunder was one of them. For those of you who are not familiar with the book, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people are, which is a shame, because I find the book to be absolutely enjoyable. But it is a kind of a two-pronged approach to a story, which I found very interesting. The first half of the book, I mean, I say half, but there's kind of phases. The book introduces a character named of Arjun, who is lives in a world where entities known as gods are not only very real, but they regularly interact with mortals such as you and I. Arjun is part of some nature of monastery, temple, church. You can kind of name it how you will. But what they worship is music, really, more than anything. And there is a god of their temple, some sort of being, and the entire thing about it is a a chorus of voices, a series of chords. It's kind of really hard to describe exactly what it's supposed to be, but it suffuses the entire building. Everybody can kind of feel it. They're kind of in tune with it, and it's kind of like a constant music kind of living in their heads. And one day it vanishes, and Arjun is the one that is picked to go try to hunt down the missing god. And so his goal is to go to the city, and it's this gigantic, sprawling super metropolis, which is very much described as a city with no actual borders, really. The city is not only gigantic, it's huge. It stretches from horizon to horizon. We're talking something bigger than a Los Angeles, bigger than a New York. And the thing is that it's not just one god that inhabits the city. It's many, many, many gods. And as the gods kind of show up, and as they kind of move around the landscape / countryside, as they move around the city, they happen to change the city as they pass. So a god of water, as it kind of moves, they're not usually that general. Like there might be a god of, not just justice, but specifically a god of, specifically prison keeping is one example. It's actually a god specifically of prisons. But there might be a god of a specific river, and as that god passes through the city, it may adjust the course of a river, and then through that, all of the surrounding city. So part of the story follows the story of Arjun, as he... I need a bridge. Let's build a bridge. For some reason, I'm sorry, the dogs are boofing for some reason. I guess there's someone here doing something. Yes, I want my red Zen bridge, please. So part of the story follows Arjun as he reaches the city, and then kind of reaches out to a variety of peoples, scholars and such, to try to figure out, have they seen his god? If they haven't, where should he look? So we follow him. We also partially follow, I believe his name is Jack. A story of a, kind of a child prisoner. Let's see, is this the right spot for it? And, yeah, perfect. He's kind of a child prisoner. He's, kind of a workhouse child. His entire life is very much, stuck inside of a, single building. He's not allowed to leave. Very company town sort of feel. And it's basically a sweatshop, and there's no way to leave. And one day, a god known as the Bird shows up. And the entire thing about the Bird is just, it's a god of flight and freedom. And the Bird's worshippers kind of wear these brightly colored ragged clothing. And as the Bird flies over, as this god kind of passes, followers who are beneath the Bird and wearing clothing that represents freedom, with thoughts of freedom in their head and thoughts of flight, may temporarily gain the ability to fly. Now, generally things will also go very badly afterwards, because they only gain the ability to fly as long as the Bird is immediately overhead. As soon as the Bird, passes, they lose flight and they typically die. But because Jack wants it so bad, and because he has kind of a really good outfit, for some reason he gets to keep flight. And it's kind of a permanent thing for him, so he becomes a very Peter Pan style figure. Flying, a voice for freedom, leader of the children of the city, of a gang of, basically mini pirates. So the story follows him. We also get to kind of hear a little bit about the city itself and some of the personages going around. And then we also follow the story of the Thunderer itself. And the idea behind the Thunderer was that some scientists decided to take the power of the Bird, that power of flight, and kind of steal a little bit of it and pump it into an airship. And all of a sudden, they took a basically an ocean-going battleship. Excuse me, got a hair in my mouth. Took like an ocean-going battleship and basically, took an envelope of a dirigible and put it above the battleship, so that way the battleship could now be a flying dreadnought that could go anywhere, and in so doing, kind of establish the scientist lord as the power among these airways. So we get the story of the Thunderer. So there's a lot of these kind of intertwining stories, and they've got some very interesting world building. The interaction between the gods and the world, and also how the mortals around kind of deal with the fact that gods just kind of are there. We get to hear a lot of different types of gods, a lot of different types of ways they're worshipped, how they deal with outsiders, and how that has kind of created a socio-political area around the city that then people have to deal with. The books then turn a little bit later on, add in the concept of corrupted gods due to some things that have happened inside of the story. And these corrupted gods are kind of interesting because they don't work the way they're supposed to. They're kind of inherently broken, and that starts causing problems throughout the story that then interacts with Arjun, Jack, and the Thunderer. It's a very interesting story. The story goes in very different places that I really wasn't expecting. But I think the big thing for the story, while I enjoy the story in and of itself, I really enjoy the Peter Pan style of Jack. And Arjun, because of his innate outsider nature, because he's not a native of the city, he is very much a wanderer by nature. Arjun makes a really good both canvas for the reader to kind of implant themselves on, but he also ends up working very well as a mouthpiece for the reader, because he doesn't know anything, because he is just kind of this character that kind of just sits here and knows very little about what's going on. He works very well to ask the questions that we want to know and to help explore the city or explore the storylines going on. Makes for an interesting concept, because you'll end up having a question of, well, how does this work? How does that work? And Arjun might be asking the same thing. And as a person who, I love world building, as a general rule, like world building I find is incredibly fun and incredibly satisfying. And I love seeing when various authors try to build that world. And that's what I really liked about Thunderer as a book, is that it was really all about that world building. I feel the story itself, it's very interesting to mess with the rules of the world, but that's really what the book feels like to me. I got a balloon hat. Okay, I'm curious. This sounds interesting. What is a balloon hat? Oh, okay. It is a hat made of balloons. That makes perfect sense, I guess. But what's kind of interesting for the book is that it doesn't feel as much as a kind of traditional story that you would normally expect. You really look at a more traditional story and or traditional style story architecture, and you typically have a lot more agency in the characters, and that's kind of an interesting thing in Thunderer, is that a lot of the characters, Arjun and Jack especially, Jack a little bit less so, but they don't really have a lot of agency in and of themselves. What I mean by that is that they're very reactionary characters. They don't really have a lot they do in and of themselves. They just kind of a wild log bench. Interesting. They have stuff that they want to do. They have actions they want to take. They have kind of goals of their own. Arjun searching for his god, and Jack kind of trying to just lead his wild children and have them do things. What is this recipe? Wild log bench. Is it literally just... Looks like it's just a log that you can just sit on. Okay. Put that on a beach. But I find that Arjun very much is a reactionary character. I never really get the feeling that he is actively taking an active role in his life. He's just kind of going along with the flow, and then something happens and he reacts, then something else happens and he reacts. Which makes I feel like his part of the story, while the more interesting parts, because more interesting things happen to Arjun than happen to Jack. It makes Arjun less of an interesting character, and it makes him a little bit less of a, I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with all of these, recipes. But it definitely feels like Arjun is a less interesting character, because he doesn't really do a lot in and of himself. And I know that might sound a little bit weird, but, you know, I'm used to characters that are kind of actively doing things. They have a goal, and they seek the goal. And, you know, they might deal with whatever comes their way while also dealing with their goal, but they're kind of, you know, they're chasing it down. You know, you kind of look at, you know, you kind of look at something like Ringworld, for example, where the characters do have to be very reactionary because these fantastical things keep happening to them. They get, you know, knocked down onto this world, and they have to kind of survive, and weird, different things keep on happening throughout this world of theirs. So they're very reactionary, but they always have a goal. Their goal is to, you know, go do this thing, which will allow them to escape. Okay, they did the thing, cool. Let's do this other thing that also is tied to allowing us to escape. But they have a goal, and they seek to follow it. Okay, Sahara is my visitor today. And if you go look at something like, you know, let's say Harry Potter or something like that, in the, you know, Harry Potter books, yes, Harry tends to be a very reactionary character, because things just happen to him. But he is actively seeking to do a thing. You know, he's seeking to pass his classes, or, you know, the Sorcerer's Stone exists, how can I find it? They have goals, and they seek to follow them. Whereas Arjun never really, he has his main goal, but he never really gets, at least to my memory, he never really gets a lot of sub-goals. So we got chain link fence and lava flooring. Interesting. So he never really gets, you know, a sub-goal, which I find interesting. He just, you know, if he's not following the main goal, just react to whatever happens. But, and Jack does have goals. So Jack is actively going after things that he wants to do. So he makes for a more dynamic character, and he makes for a more interesting character. But Arjun's the one that has more interesting things happen to him. I don't really want to go too deep into it because it's major plot points in the story that really drive the story forwards. But Arjun is the one that has the more interesting things happen. So the problem is that, again, he's a very reactionary character. So while he is doing the more interesting things, it's not because he's a character that is interesting. Which might sound a little bit, that might end up sounding a little bit weird, a little bit, let's see, what did I get? I got purple Persian rug, straw wall, red carpet. Straw wall, interesting. That might sound a little bit nonsensical, a little bit, you know, a little bit at odds with itself, that he's the less interesting character, but he's the more interesting one to read about. But, you know, again, it's very much, it's because of the things that happen to him. It would be a little more interesting to me if it was just all about Jack. But really, the world building is what really drew me to this world, and it's made me think about, you know, I tried to run a D&D campaign that had a similar concept to it. About, you know, a very large, ever-changing city with gods that walk among us, and their passage is really what their passage changes the city on a constant basis, allowing players to gradually interact with gods and kind of, you know, do stuff with them, while always having the, you know, greater or lesser gods potentially be a potential problem for them. We even started them off by having, you know, the players basically stolen from their houses by the followers of a god that sought to imprison them because they were literally too ignorant. for the gods' followers to you know, be happy with. Thought it was definitely an interesting story. Now, there was a sequel, and I haven't read the sequel. I want to, but I did hear very much through reviews, the sequel was not quite appreciated as well as the original. So I'm gonna have to go look. Okay, what did we get here? So we got simple pink bath mat, future tech flooring. Okay. I heard someone over here. Hey, Broccolo. Broccolo. I need to give you a thing. You get a pullover jacket. It's definitely a weird thing to say that I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the book. Actually, I intend to reread it in the somewhat near future. But it definitely has a bit, but also, you know, kind of, you know, putting that complaint and putting that criticism in that, you know, this character just doesn't really work for me as well as I would want them to. You know, generally when I really like something, and I mean, this applies to a lot of things, but generally when I really enjoy a piece of media, I don't really have a lot of complaints about it. Yes, I could criticize it, but usually my enjoyment of it kind of overrides that, and I kind of, you know, err on the side of I enjoyed it and therefore fine. Thunderer is kind of a different one for me. It's just, there's so many good ideas, and it seems like some of them were done very well and some of them weren't. You know, I guess I will now say, you know, spoilers ahead and actually go dive right in. So, yeah, skip ahead a few minutes. But Thunderer really has some concepts about the interactions between people and, you know, and these otherworldly forces. Having, you know, you have these gods walk amongst the you know, walk amongst the people, right? And they kind of wander around, and, you know, they're not really, they're forces of nature, is, I think, an interesting way to really do this in books. I often see that, you know, you have, you know, God capital G or gods lowercase g, but when you see this type of character, you know, think Greek mythology or think Norse mythology or something like that. Typically, when you see these gods, they are actual characters in of themselves. They have personality. They're humanized, which, while very interesting, and it means you can really interact with them, it definitely takes away some of the mystique of them as gods. Whereas in Thunderer, the gods are very much forces of nature. They don't really talk to people. They don't really interact with people. They do whatever it is they're going to do, and that causes a change in the world. And if you don't like it, that's tough. These guys are beyond the realm of mortal ken. It's not something that you really, you know, you don't have control over it. And they are gods. They are gods, and they act like gods, and that is what they are. We'll come pick this up in a second. And that really makes Thunderer kind of interesting in that perspective, because most books I read that have, you know, the, you know, godlike characters, the gods are, you interact with them. They are characters in and of themselves. And again, while that's, you know, that's a fine thing to have, it makes them a little bit more of a staple of the book. Whereas Thunderer goes in a somewhat different direction with its style, in that the gods are, again, they're forces of nature. You can't really interact with them. You know, you can't say hi to a god in Thunderer in the same way that you can't say hi to, you can say hi to a rain cloud, but the rain cloud's not going to respond to you. And Thunderer does a lot of the same stuff. But it also makes the future portions of the story a little bit more interesting, especially as we get into you know, into the second act, really. Act 1 of the book is really all about introducing Arjun and Jack as characters that you should interact with. And, that's interesting. But it really goes off once we get the concept of the Thunderer itself. I never really understood, to be honest with you, why the book was named after the Thunderer, because the Thunderer isn't even a main piece of the book. It's a side piece. It really is. It's a flying battleship which can be used to overpower things. We see it once or twice in the book, destroying a tower or attacking something. And it really, shows the power of the gods, absolutely. But at the same time, it's not used very much. It just kind of exists, a thing that's there. Later on in the book, Jack and his crew of flying misfits, because if you're near Jack, you get the ability to fly too, which is part of his ability and his mystique. Jack and his crew of flying misfits eventually do steal the Thunderer, and now you have Peter Pan and his Lost Boys that have their own flying pirate ship, and that allows them to get to even more mischief. And for Jack, just the ability it's just the freedom of moving on. Arjun, on the other hand, ends up getting into his own troubles, where he ends up finding a man who... the man's kind of weird. He's a little bit of a time traveler. He's a little bit of he's a dimensional traveler. He's kind of all kinds of stuff, to be honest with you. And he found the ability to capture a god's essence by way of a photograph. And, okay, so there's our chain link fence. Interesting if you want to have, like, a rooftop style. Again, we have that weird depth nonsense going on. So we got rooftop. We're going to put that away. We have puzzle wall. Okay. We have straw wall. Okay. It's not bad. Let's see. We have red carpet. Okay. Let's go ahead and put the shanty mat away. We do have a simple pink bath mat. All right. I like this flooring. This flooring is really good. Some big bath mat, red carpet, medium orange mat, yellow message mat. We got the purple Persian rug, which I really like, actually. Doesn't work really well in this room, just because of the nature of, like, the flooring. But I do really like that, so I'm going to have to find a place to put that. Probably in the main room, once I figure out what we're doing there. We also have lava flooring. Ooh, neat. And future tech flooring. Ooh, cool. I like it. Lots of interesting stuff that we get to play with. Okay. Let's go ahead and put away our balloon hat. Put away our bells. Don't know if I already have a loom. We'll put that away too. So this man, this dimensional traveler, this very much very, very, very interesting, and he steals pieces of gods by way of using a photograph. Arjun ends up actually breaking one out, and this little piece tries to return back to its main body, and in doing so corrupts the main body, and the main body becomes effectively insatiable, and among other things, it knows that it has been corrupted, and it tries to hunt down Arjun to kind of both link with him and also punish him for what he has done, for kind of ruining it. And even then, this thing is basically a force of nature, but it becomes much more of a powerhouse, and it becomes a bigger piece of the story. It becomes basically a villain. And a lot of Arjun's story is about how do I deal with this thing. So the story takes very interesting turns there. There's a little bit of like multi-dimensional theory, which I'm always fascinated with. It very much has a BioShock Infinite sort of feel, especially towards the end of the story. Kind of very interesting themes, which, as I said, Arjun has tons of strange and wonderful things happen to him. It's just that he as a character is kind of weak. But very interesting themes. The thing is just somehow they work together, while at the same time, I can't help but feel that the stories and themes, they work together, but they kind of come out of nowhere. You know, you have this very kind of weird introduction to Arjun and his, you know, in this temple monastery thing that he's part of, and then it becomes a story about the city and the bird, and then it becomes a story about, okay, let's go explore the city, and then it becomes a story about let's find the god, and then it's let's corrupt a god, let's survive the corrupted god. Then it's a story of, you know, how do I deal with this thing that's chasing after me? How do I solve it? Oh, now we're hopping dimensions. Oh, hey, there's a little bit of time travel. There's this weird stuff all over the place. And while it ends up coming together in a fairly positive way, like it ends up coming together into this interesting story, it doesn't quite hit that point where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It doesn't quite get that point. So Shatter's out somewhere. That's kind of a weird thing to say, because usually I find books like that actually do end up working out very well. This one just... It's a good book. It's an entertaining book. I enjoy it a lot. But, you know, kind of in my memory, I do end up thinking of it as a book that just kind of... It probably could have done better with less, I guess. I do encourage people to read it. It's a very fun book, and as I said, it's a very good case study in creating a world, in creating an interesting set of mythologies, and creating just an interesting setting in general. And I find that a lot of people, you know, when they try to go, especially for a more fantasy setting, and keep in mind, this is not intensely fantasy. Once you kind of get past the initial, there are gods that walk among us, the story very much is fairly grounded. You do have a little bit more of that pseudo-medieval setting, but it's more of a fantasy medieval setting. So a lot of trappings of modern life hidden on the veneer of street markets, and, you know, there's not really much magic apart from what the gods themselves actually do, or what they're harnessed to do. So, you know, a lot of people have this issue with creating settings and making the settings interesting enough to be a basis, but not making settings the entire thing. You know, there has to be something else going on apart from your setting. You know, as an example from earlier, you know, the Ring World is an interesting setting for the story of the Ring World books. It's got a lot of cool ideas floating around, a lot of interesting science and math floating around. But at the same time, the entire story revolves around our characters and around their interactions, not necessarily the fact that it's just the Ring World. You have Harry Potter, and we have Hogwarts and Hogsmeade and all these, you know, amazing places, but they are not the story. They are just the setting. But I've definitely seen, you know, there are times that people will create a setting, and they assume the setting itself is going to be able to kind of drive an entire cohesive story. You know, kind of an example of that is, and bear with me, but kind of an example of that is BioShock, the first one. You know, the first BioShock creates this underwater city of Rapture, and for a considerable amount of time while you're in Rapture, Rapture itself is the story. It's just, let's go explore Rapture. Let's just see what this setting is. You're not really interacting with the story. There's really no story that you yourself are in. It's just explore Rapture. Rapture is what you're doing. Later on, of course, they do build a little bit more of a story and give you more of a motivation for yourself. But for a very long time in that game, it's just explore Rapture. Or, you know, kind of similar in BioShock Infinite, just explore Columbia. You know, Columbia itself is the story. It's not until later that we start getting the actual remainder of the story that you are actually involved and invested in. There are plenty of games that do that. But your story has to be more than just a setting. The setting itself is not everything. I don't know why I came in here. Pretty sure I have KK Parade, but we'll give it to someone. I do need a handcart. I'm trying to think of a good example of a story that, or a book where just the setting was trying to be the entire story. And the problem is I have a really hard time doing so because they're not stuff that I really appreciate. You know, you need more than that. And I'm actually having trouble trying to think of one. Let's go look at our clothing. But world building is always a very important thing to me. If you're not gonna be just in modern Earth or a historical Earth, if you're going somewhere else, then it is. How much money do I have? Some. Anything to say today? If you're gonna have a story, if you're gonna be in a place where you're not in, you know, a setting the reader is familiar with, you do have kind of a responsibility, at least a little bit, to help the reader understand where you're coming from. You know, what your setting is, what you're doing. And I find that some books kind of, and some movies and some, you know, some games, they don't really go out of their way to really describe your setting or even build the world. And that's not to say that you have to make everything understandable or anything like that, but you do need to go at least a little bit out of your way to make sure the reader understands what's going on. Now, there is a bit of an exception to this rule, and the exception is if the story is about exploring that location. You don't need to explain the story to them or explain the location to them if the character is going to be learning that over time. But if the characters are supposed to be knowledgeable about the world, the reader needs to learn too. And I find that some authors, the world building just doesn't end up happening. You know, you can build something interesting, put a little bit of stuff in there, and then they just give up on it. Like, they're like, okay, this world, we don't need to follow up on anymore. I think I talked about this somewhat recently, but there's the Marked books, the Servants of Fate trilogy by Sarah Fine, which is more of a romance novel than anything, or a romance trilogy. Hi. What's up? Okay, your reaction. Pleased, wish well, simple greeting. Oh God, she picked up Feta Believe. No. Damn. That was for chatter only. Why did you learn this one? But she builds this kind of interesting post-apocalyptic world. Or not even post-apocalyptic necessarily, but like post-climate change. You know, I mean, it really is post-apocalyptic because there's this apocalyptic ravaging disease going around everywhere. But she built this interesting world with interesting characters. The concept of the fairies delivering souls from, delivering souls to the afterlife, and that's their job. And the cur, whose entire job is to what's up? Look at the fins on that beta. It's like a classic car combined with a fish. Vroom vroom. So one of my donations? Yes, it was. Can you? I'm just gonna move you over here real quick. Here, have there you go. Have KK Corral. And you're gonna give me a plaid puff sleeve shirt. Can you give me something interesting? I've had this shirt like a couple times. Is this? I think it's the frog I'm hearing there. But she goes into this world and kind of giving us an idea of this the world gone wrong and the last bastions of humanity, fighting against not terrible things, not necessarily not supernatural entities, just fighting against a world where global warming has already happened and cities are flooded. Fighting against a world where there's diseases that ravage mankind and people die by the thousands. She goes into this world and then it kind of never comes up again. We don't get to hear anything more about it. It's interesting. The characters should be interacting with it, and they don't. Like, they stop interacting with the entire world, and everything they do is with this small, secluded community of theirs. Which, okay, cool, great. You know, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it means that there's... You kind of lose the world building you made, you know? I'm trying to think of other good examples of just kind of world building that just kind of stopped happening. Literally pulling out my phone so I can pull up my book list, but you know, generally, yes, thank you, phone. I appreciate all of these alerts that you decided I need to know right now. I hate that this thing doesn't... There we go. I mean, I mean, there's a number of worlds that get slowly revealed to us. And, you know, you don't necessarily see it in the initial book, maybe. You know, there's very sparse world building, I think, in, like, the first Discworld novel. We get some very slight glimpses of it, and it's this really, like, kind of weird, fantastic world, and it's just... It's like the old Harry Potter movies, like the first couple. Was it the first couple? No, sorry. Starting at 3. Where, in the first 2 movies... When we see something fantastic happens, it's fantastic to Harry, but no one else. And so the movies kind of play them off as something not quite as amazing. It's not quite as amazing, not because it isn't an amazing thing. It's not amazing because we as the audience should not be expecting it to be amazing, because no one else does. It's only amazing to Harry. If we're seeing any wonder in in what's going on, it's because we're watching it through Harry's eyes, and that's about it. In the later movies, every new mythological something, every new magical effect is made into a huge deal. But in the first couple of movies, maybe a little bit less so. It was more about the small things. It was more about the thrill of flying on a broomstick. Not actually flying on the broomstick. That wasn't the deal. It was the thrill of it. It was the, you know, the wonder at seeing Diagon Alley, not all the weird stuff in Diagon Alley. It was a very, very distinctly different thing. Whereas in some of the newer movies, and also especially in Discworld especially, it's not really, like, in the first 2 books, it was just stuff. Just, here's dryads. This is how we do dryads. Here's, you know, this is how we jump off the edge of the world. Look, we have a water golem for some reason. These kind of things came out of nowhere. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, we didn't get a lot of world building. We got a lot of facts about the world. But it wasn't building a world. Building a world is a decidedly different thing. You know, I kind of compare that against maybe the concept of Dune. You know, you go look at Dune, and there's this really hefty work on building this world, on showing us why is Arrakis so different. Not just Arrakis, what's so different about the galaxy? What's so different about this universe? We have this, you know, space kingdom, and we hear little snippets about you know, the great houses fighting, and then there's the houses minor, you know, this fight between the Atreides and the Harkonnen. We end up seeing all of these things, and it all kind of hints at a much larger thing going on the outside, and sometimes it'll be explained if it's important, but the fact is that it exists. And sometimes that works, but it's a different style. The world outside of Arrakis is not necessarily as important. We're going to give you hints, but that's not important. Let's describe Arrakis. And then, you know, yes, we could say Arrakis is just the Middle East of the universe, and it just so happens to have, it just so happens to have spice, and that's what makes it different. But there's kind of these distinct, here's some culture, here's some, you know, we don't have water, this is how to deal with it instead. There's all of these little things that kind of go into the world of Dune that you get to kind of explore and hear about through various people. And sometimes it's made to be a fantastic thing, and sometimes it's made to be this very minor, just passing detail, because at the end of the day, it is. You know, things like thopters or things like water seals are a pretty big deal, but they're more of a minor thing. They aren't a thing that you would end up spending a lot of time in this world, because, oh, okay, that makes sense. You know, it's water, you know, we seal the water, and that's how we make sure that we don't, you know, dehydrate. There's just some authors do it better than others, is I guess the end of the day. And also, it's more interesting in some cases than others. And I think that's what really got me into Thunderer, was not necessarily the story, it was the world building that I got to kind of follow along with. I think that's kind of what kept me with the book, it was that world that I got to explore and got to, you know, hear amazing things about. Come on, you. Play nice. Be what I want. Be something good. Nope. Not much in other news, though, after I spent 45 minutes talking about a book. Having trouble with my mouse. I'm a little bit irritated in this. I have this issue with multiple computer mice over the past couple of years. It seems to happen just kind of over time. And it just... My mice just spontaneously start double-clicking whenever I click on anything. It's incredibly obnoxious. Damn. I should never be talking when I'm actually trying to catch a fish, because I always screwed up. You. Crap. I can't draw it back, because it might actually look the second I try to draw it back. There we go. You know, just trying to click to select a video file. And when I click to select whatever file I'm trying to get, damn you, it'll open the video instead, because I think I double-clicked. And, you know, there's a lot of things in computers or on the internet that rely on double-clicking as opposed to single-clicking. A lot of things that rely on single-clicking as opposed to double-clicking. So all of a sudden you end up having this issue where it's really hard to interact with anything. And I've had this issue with multiple mice from multiple manufacturers over the years. Now, what I gather from, you know, some minor research that I did is that this has a large part to do with what switches are used in the mice to detect your clicks, and that a lot of maybe, you know, not good switches are being used in a lot of these mice. But it really kind of annoys me that I spent, you know, like $150 on this mouse. So keep in mind, it's a wireless mouse with a rechargeable battery. That's new. One of the things that we were aiming for. A giant trevally. Okay, I do still need a mahi-mahi. But it definitely bothers me that I spend all this money on a mouse, and, like, I got this mouse 6 months ago. It is almost unusable at this point. Like, it is extremely hard for me to do what I'm supposed to do. You know, when I do some, you know, some video editing. Not a lot of it, and I know you guys know this. I've been kind of notoriously reticent about doing any kind of video editing, because it's just a lot of work I don't care to do. But on the minor video editing I do, I end up, cutting up videos in Sony Vegas in order to take like a stream and cut it into multiple smaller pieces to upload individually. And in order to do this in kind of batch render, I have to create regions in Vegas, which means I select, two sides of a clip that I made and declare it a region. Well, the problem is if you double click on the edge of a clip in Sony Vegas, it opens up this entire other view, which is really unhelpful. And I have to unopen that by double clicking again. So, imagine a situation where your mouse just double-clicks spontaneously for no freaking reason, and all of a sudden you're opening this screen over and over and over and over and over. I also have noticed some issues of just getting it to click at all. On some things that do not use double clicks, the mouse doesn't seem to want to work. I was having issues in League of Legends the other night, just freaking buying stuff because I could not get the mouse to operate the way I wanted it to. So it's really, really obnoxious stuff. But the thing is, I buy warranties. It's a thing that I do. I've talked about it in the past. I buy warranties on a lot of stuff that I buy. And I bought a warranty on this mouse. So I'm like, great. I have a warranty through Best Buy. I'll just go ahead and, call them after work and figure out what I'm going to do. So, because, Best Buy right now with the whole COVID thing, you can't go really into the building. So everything is done at curbside. It's like, okay, how do I replace my mouse with Best Buy at curbside while also getting another warranty, things like that? So I call them. They say it should be easy. Just come on in, let them know what you need, and they swap it out. It's like, great. But I check, and no one within 200 miles has the mouse. So I try to go online to talk to one of their agents to figure out how do I get this mouse. And it's a 15-minute wait just to talk with an agent through text, not even calling them. And calling them was a 30-minute wait. Check with the agent through text, and they say, hey, there's not really much we can do through chat. You do need to call in. So they give me a phone number to call. I wait 30 minutes. Oh, change of hour. Yay! We finally get to see it. The fountain does actually do a thing at the change of the hour. So I call in, wait 30 minutes. I have to have them actually call me back. Wait 30 minutes. And then they're like, hey, well, there's not really much we can do for you on the phone. We can definitely see that your warranty is valid. So just, call the local store and have them order it for you. It's like, cool. Why didn't anybody tell me this from the get-go? Like, I called that store an hour ago. Now they're closed. So actually, I have to call them in a few minutes. But now they were closed then. So I wasn't able to actually, get my freaking mouse all set up. So now I'm going to have to wait for them to order. It's going to take several days. Like, it's going to be a whole thing. And I have to deal with this mouse over the course of the weekend in any gaming that I try to do. It's a whole pain. It really is. Like, this has become a production. And it bothers me, too, because I'm going to replace this mouse. It's still under manufacturer's warranty. The manufacturer's warranty is 2 years. So it's still under manufacturer's warranty. So my warranty with Best Buy should, I guess, I don't know if it gets refunded or how it works. My warranty with them should be taken care of. Generally, I have no complaints about Best Buy and their customer service. Usually, it's very quick in-out, swap-out. It's one of the reasons I buy my warranties through them. Because I've had my earphones break down, I've had to replace. I've had my, I've had video game systems break down and replace. It's all been fairly simple and enjoyable. But this one kind of takes the cake. I don't know what's, international number. Why are they calling me? I don't know what's going on there. Kind of a pain in the ass, and it's causing me some undue stress in just, like, working and playing video games. Working is the more major of the issues. This is another darner. There's another butterfly I'm looking for. They're supposed to be getting, like, a banded or a striped butterfly, something like that. Not butterfly, dragonfly. I'm supposed to be getting it, and I haven't actually seen one yet. Ah, well. Okay, well, I'm going to go deal with my mouse and go back to work. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys, as always. As usual, if there is anything you want me to talk about, you can leave a comment in the comment section below. I read them all. Let me know what you want me to talk about, and I will do my best to oblige. Ooh, nice. Yeah, do leave comments. I do listen to them all. I do read them all. If you have anything to talk about, you know, if you want to know more about Thunder, or maybe you read it and you want to talk about it, or your thoughts on world building, all that stuff, let me know. You can let me know about your shopping woes during COVID. If you leave a like on the video, I do appreciate it. It does help other people find the videos better. Lots of people are making Animal Crossing videos. It's going to be hard to find these ones. So make their lives easier by hitting like. And if you want to see more of my videos, if you can hit subscribe, I'm updating basically every day. I missed 2 days this week. But I've updated almost every day since the game came out. So there's been a lot of Animal Crossing. And there's more to come. We also have things like, you know, Terraria going up for the next while. But there's some Terraria videos going up. You know, I have videos on La Mulana 2 that are going to be coming up pretty soon. So lots of videos. So hit subscribe and you get to be alerted when they go up. And, you know, we do streams. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. I wasn't feeling well yesterday, so I missed it. Man, past a couple days were bad days. But did miss out on that. But I usually stream a lot on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. And I sometimes have streams for no good reason on other days. Today might be one of those days. So you can follow me on Twitch. There also should be a link to Discord in the description. You can catch me on Discord, say hi. I'll post when I'm doing stuff. All kinds of good stuff. For now, thanks for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you guys next time.